Hey, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Geeks Rising podcast. That's right. The Geeks Rising Podcast Network now has a podcast. Woo! Sorry. This is going this is going to be either a monthly or quarterly live stream and podcast where members of the Geeks Rising Podcast Network get together. We talk about what we've been working on, what we've learned over that content creation journey, and just share all of that with you. And hopefully you can gain something from that. On this show, we have a couple of different hosts from different shows on the network. We have Heather Welch.
Hey.
She is the host of the Sunshine and Power Cuts podcast. And we have Logan Noggle.
Hello.
Logan is the host of On the Subject, or the co-host of On the Subject, and the host of Conversations with Creators. If you don't know anything about Geeks Rising, you can find more info at geeksrising.com. And I should note that the website and everything has changed quite drastically. It started initially as a general catch-all for the projects that myself and Logan were working on. So we had articles, we had videos, we had everything. But now it is strictly just a podcast network. And this change stemmed from a goal that I set for myself on my show, where I wanted to start the podcast network and over this year bring on a few new shows. And we have our first new show rather, with Sunshine and Power Cuts. Very happy to have that show on the network. It's amazing and very calming. You definitely need to check that out. And the last time we did a hangout with all the Geeks Rising shows was the Paper Robots, episode 119, which was back February 1st, 2018. It's been over a year, and we haven't spoken since. It's been a very long time in between. So let me walk you through very briefly the different shows on the network. As I mentioned, we have Sunshine and Power Cuts, which is off-the-grid living and a wellness show. We have On the Subject, which is film discussion and film analysis. We have Conversations with Creators, which is pretty self-explanatory. Logan sits down with other creators and they discuss their journey and how they got to where they are. Then we have my show, the Bander Says podcast, which is creator news analysis. And lastly, we have kind of the creator case study, which I've only done 5 episodes of, and it hasn't come out in probably half a year. So does it still exist? I don't know. But let me go ahead and introduce the hosts a little bit more, or let them introduce themselves. Heather, how you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, good. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of Geeks Rising. That was incredible because I found it back in 2017 when I found Podcastage and looked into all the other things that you do. And from there, I found the Paper Robots podcast and got to see Logan sometimes when he did the videos and hear his creative conversations that he had there. And then I got to be a guest on one, which was awesome. So I'm proud to be a part of Geeks Rising because I love what it sort of stands for and the helping people sort of discover and explore their passions and become better creators is awesome. So I host Sunshine and Power Cuts, which is a podcast that features 2 types of episodes that alternate. There are sunshine ones, which offer inspiration drawn from nature, and I came to that because I live off the power grid in rural New Zealand, and so it's a bit different. It is calming, so yeah, some people enjoy that element, and yeah, proud to be a part of the network.
And we are proud to have you on the network. So thank you for being a part of it. Logan, can you talk about the shows that you do and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. Thanks for having me be a part of Geeks Rising and kind of being there since it started uh, back, like you were saying, when we were doing articles and all that, and that was a real chance for me to try out writing and doing stuff outside of the comic writing that I do. And it's been really cool to be a part of the growth and changes that that Geeks Rising has gone through, including the Paper Robots, which was my kickstart into podcasting, and it was the birthplace for what the 2 shows now that I host are, with Conversations with Creators, which is really stemmed from the Paper Robots episodes that I would talk to other creators and we would talk about how they got started, what they do and why they do it. And then all the pop culture stuff that I would talk about with other creators and my friends. And it felt like those 2 things could be independent from each other. So splitting them up at the end of 2018 in December, ending the paper robots and starting two new shows that I could co-host and collaborate with people with, and then just like allowing me to be a part of the Geeks Rising Now network is awesome. And meeting Heather through Geeks Rising and through Podcastage and through your show, I love how once you join these communities, it's the same thing in comics communities. Once you join them, you realize how like close they are while being international and across the world. How it's still like this tight community that you connect with and have bonds with. So for me, it's been an absolute pleasure to be on the journey and to be doing two different shows that I can focus, the film, the pop culture stuff with, and talk to like have conversations with different creators and share their stories.
Yeah, it has really been awesome to see your progression and be working with you that entire time because we met by me sending you I don't know why we're friends. I don't know. I wouldn't be a friend with me, but I sent you a message and I said, "Your audio stinks. Fix it." And we've been friends ever since.
It was the brutal honesty that I needed at the time. It was perfect. I was like, I like this guy. I like what he has going on.
Yeah, but it's been really great seeing both of you grow so much since you've started, and so happy to have both of you on the network. Honored that you would even consider being a part of the network is awesome. Let's go ahead and talk about what we've been working on. I think that's where we'll really spend a lot of time. So, Heather, do you want to talk about what you've been working on over the past couple of months and maybe share a little bit of what you've learned from that process?
Yeah, I had a busy year this year. We had the March Sunshine Summit, which is a week of live streams I do, bringing people together to celebrate connections. And that came about because, like, connections are something that's important when you're connecting to nature and relying on it for power and stuff, but also making connections in this podcasting community around the world is amazing. And sharing those stories to help inspire and empower people kind of flows through the theme of all that I do. And we prepared for that from January to March and had that in March, and it was amazing. We had, I think, 11 guests over 7 or 8 days, and yeah, I learned a lot from that experience. I learned a lot about live streaming and planning and preparing an event and getting people on board. And a couple of things that really stuck out were that it's important to have a plan because something like that can't just be sort of brought up at last minute, and there was a lot that went into it. So I kind of covered it in an episode I did on my show where the lovely Steph Fuccio, who's in the chat, managed to interview me and ask me questions about it. And having a plan, asking people, being genuine in the way that you ask people to be a part of something like that, and having value that you want to share. And I think that's what Geeks Rising is about too. Is about sharing value, and so that's why that's really cool. Other than that, on Instagram, I share moments of my connections with nature that I have, and it's really a great way to show people what kind of nature I'm connecting with that I kind of share in the sunshine episodes, the themes of that and what I talk about. And it's something that I like to do regularly because it's visual and it kind of helps resonate with people a little bit more. And then you've got the audio side of that with the podcast. Um, just switching, this is going to be awkward, and switching back to the summit. Um, the Instagram thing has been good because there's like engagement happening there, which is awesome. And with the summit, it's like it really made me think about what I needed to define success as, because it's a little thing that I started not very far into my whole journey. And it's a big thing to do, to ask people to come on and do live things with you. But then I had to sort of look at, what does success mean to me? And so that's a journey thing that I'm going on and defining, I guess, as I go. Yeah.
Logan, can you talk a little bit about what you've well, actually first, Heather, can I ask you a question about some of the stuff you've been working on?
Yeah.
What is if you could boil down just to one thing you learned from the latest summit that maybe somebody could take if they were planning a similar event, what would that be?
Probably just whatever your intention is, run with that. Like, we can get caught up in the nitty-gritty details, like it's a big thing, but just know that you wanna share something and you've got good intentions, and go with it, because that help makes it fun. Everyone gets engaged and can feel that passion that you have for it, and it will make it a success. It'll make it something people wanna be a part of.
That's great advice. And it really was an awesome event. I don't know how you do it. It's so inspiring seeing you set up, what was it, 10 live streams?
Yeah, 10 or 11, yeah.
10 or 11 within a week. It's insane. I struggle to do maybe one every year, and you're doing 10 in a week twice. So it is truly impressive. And I absolutely loved everybody that you had on. It was so cool to see. So
Thank
great
you.
job.
Being on this,
Logan,
though, I now feel for all my guests because it's the opposite.
it takes a little bit of pressure off of you though, because if anybody is going to get criticized, it's going to be the host. So if you have anything negative to say, send it to me on Twitter. Don't send it to Heather or Logan. Send it to me at Bandrew Says. Send all your hate that way. I love it. I love it. Logan, what have you been working on?
So outside the podcast, I have been working on. I've recently attended Dink, which is a comic convention in Denver, and that was the first time I've been there for a convention. And it's a small press and indie art, so it's really focused on creators and what they create and make versus other conventions that are pop culture focused. So that was an awesome opportunity. Denver is a really diverse city as far as the people and the type of creations that are being made. And I went there with my wife who does toy design. And so we were both selling our stuff and meeting a lot of creators and people. And last year, before I ended the Paper Robots, I was living in Portland and I'd lived there for 2 years. And I decided to move back home with my girlfriend, Cynthia, at the time. We then moved back, got married, and lived back. Thank you.
Yay! Congratulations.
We moved back to the desert where it's hot and sunny at least, and we love it and hate it at the same time. It's amazing. But I also had the pleasure of being on Heather's Sunshine Summit last year, and that was awesome. I still don't do a lot of video, and so being a part of that was awesome and intense. And I can't imagine stringing all that together. I interview a lot of different creators, and we have to meet up and coordinate, and just getting one person on once a week for the show is enough. Like Bandrew was saying, having 10 days in a row, it really does, but it feels like this giant event that people are coming to be a part of, and they can watch the old ones and they can catch up or be a part of the live stream. It reminds me of going to a convention where each day there's something happening and you tune in and you're a part of the group and community. And so once again, all the praise goes to you. That's amazing. Bandrew, I love that you're gonna chew all the hate and you because you eat it up. So I appreciate that. And then
My pleasure.
I've just been focusing on getting a lot of stories out, collaborating with new artists. I write an ongoing series and then the two podcasts. And I look at it as my writing is stories I want to share and tell. And the podcasts are stories of other people that I want to share and have them tell their stories. So it's kind of interesting because I feel like all creators are telling stories, whether it's dancing, acting, singing, podcasting, making music, whatever it is. So the podcast is a way for me to talk with them and let them share their stories. And then my writing is a way for me to share my stories. And then the other podcast on the subject is a way to celebrate stories that have been made and why they work and why they don't and what we can learn from them. So I really like storytelling and discussing it, breaking it down, and doing it myself.
That's awesome. You're muted, Andrew.
Oh, sorry. I have welcome to live streaming. I'm great at this. I have a few questions for you, Logan. The first one would be when you're going to a convention. I know this is a question that you've asked some guests in the past, and I love this type of question. When you go to a convention, what are a few things that you have to bring with you? And you can't pick your comic books or the table or the banner. That doesn't count. What are a few
Okay.
essentials that somebody needs if they're running a booth at a Comic-Con?
Okay. It's something that people have told me, and I completely agree with. I always pack either mints, gum, or cough drops because conventions are recycled air for 3 days with hundreds of people walking by, and I'm a huggy, handsy, like come meet me, talk to me person. So like we'll shake hands or we'll talk. So you need the hand sanitizer because there's the thing called con crud, which is the cold you
Mhm.
get from all the germs of different people. And then I love talking, so I always have cough drops because my throat gets sore. But gum, because you never want to have bad breath, so I always bring those things. And then I geek out about backpacks and
Yes.
like travel gear, like so I'll like research like what's the best portable battery, or like does it have two ports? Is it quick charging? So I always make sure portable charger so your phone never dies because you use it for e-payments or to charge your phone to take pictures to collect video, all that. So I have a battery pack. It's Anchor. It's a quick charge, 100 milliamps if people want to know. And I also have like a Rhino Shield iPhone case that has an adaptable like lens. So I take that so I can get wide angle shots for photos. But yeah, if just pack some, have good breath and stay clean, I would say are the biggest takeaways. And then have a backpack that you can carry that you're not going to get uncomfortable with. And then the rest is kind of dealer's choice.
That oh god, that's amazing. I'm so glad you said hand sanitizer. That's one of the reasons I kind of took a step back from going to conventions because I've progressively become more of a germaphobe and kind of paranoid, and there's not enough hand sanitizer to, I guess, douse your whole body in to escape a Comic-Con without getting con crud.
Yeah.
Th so that's great advice. The second question I had is, through On the Subject where you're analyzing films, is there anything that you've learned from looking at the screenplays or discussing how the screenwriting is done that you've adapted to writing comics?
Yeah, actually, it's something post going to this convention. I'm working on a new story and pitching it to an artist. And through recording all these videos about film and movies and story structure, I've actually a lot of my ideas I'll think of like what the emotional journey is of the character, and then usually it's applied through a science fiction lens or a fictional whether I'm dealing with the emotions through a fictional metaphor. And I actually really started to think about it with this new project I'm working on, not ready to talk about, but how story structure works. Like you learn through failures. So if there's a movie that doesn't work, look at why it doesn't work, and looking at why the screenwriting is like, if I don't like the dialogue, why don't I like the dialogue, and why it doesn't work. And so a lot of that I look at how if it doesn't feel right, it's usually because the characters don't they feel like they're delivering exposition or just to get to the next scene. Like it doesn't feel like, oh, that's something the character would say, and you don't get lost in it. And that's the first thing. Like if you're reading a comic and you're looking at the comic and being like, why isn't this working? Then you failed. But if you read the bubbles, the part I do, and you don't even think about it, that's how you know it's working. So I've really looked at story structure and how what I'm trying to tell can be emphasized, or the tropes of a 3 act like hero's journey. What's his call to action, and how I can apply that and maybe twist it, or if I'm going to use those same tropes, how I can make them work.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. On a so it sounds like you need to take a more analytical look at the work. Something that I have personally found the most helpful is having somebody who's not you review something that you're working on. So Logan and Heather, do you have anybody that you send stuff to prior to releasing it to get a third party opinion, somebody who's not been so closely involved with it and they won't have any bias because whenever we create something, we all have this bias. We think it's amazing initially. Eventually, we may end up hating it, but it's always so useful to have somebody else review it prior to putting it out there. So do either of you have somebody that does that for you?
I don't. Mine is partly a time issue. So anything I make is usually last minute, and I don't have time to send it to anyone beforehand. But I was thinking about it the other day that I used to have a weekly call with my friend Jillian, and it used to be good for just sharing ideas and what I wanted to work on, and so that then when I did go away and work on it, I had a clearer idea of what I was trying to do and what to sort of tie in, and maybe she would have come up with either other ideas that I could take and use. So I don't currently have that, but I have in the past, and it's really good to have an outsider's perspective.
Agreed. Um, maybe we could help with that if you ever. I understand the plight 100% of being last minute. I finish editing my show about 30 minutes before I upload it, so I get it. There's no time to send it to anybody, and I go with the hate. Uh, but maybe if you do, Logan and I and Zach and Malcolm, who are other members of the Geeks Rising podcast network, could help. Um, Logan, do you have anybody? Does your wife help with that?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I have two different people. First off, my wife is my first go-to because she's a toy designer, creator. She does marketing for an art gallery currently, but has done it for shops and stuff in the past. So she's my first filter. As far as writing or having an idea, I pitch it to her because she gets my weird brain and gets what I'm going for, but is blunt enough and honest enough to go, yeah, I get that you want to say this. It comes off like that, or the thing in your head when you told me the story. Like I'll pitch the idea and then she'll read the script. She's like, it's not on the page. So that like she's my first and best like editor, and I feel very lucky that I can also that she's not just a fangirl or championing me like, oh yeah, you're successful, it's good. Like, no, she'll be like, this doesn't work, or you could tweak or you could tweak it. Like, and that's amazing. So I feel really lucky that my partner is that for me. And then just other artists I work with, when I send them, anytime I've sent an artist I collaborate with, I immediately go, let's discuss this. Like, here's my panel layout, here's my script. If this isn't working, let's talk about it. Like, I want it to be an open book to begin with, and then I'll make the changes, or we can collaborate on changing it. Because at the end of the day, I want it to be the best product. As far as podcasting goes, I'm in the same boat with Heather. It's or all three of us. It's last minute. We recorded, we edit it, it goes up, and like you said, I let the hate fall where it may.
Yeah.
But that being said, whenever we're talking about the ideas, I feel really lucky that I do have co-hosts Zach and Malcolm, so we discuss what movies we want, and we all come in with our own notes. So going into the recording, we all have notes, and we're bouncing off of each other, and then that just becomes edit time to edit those notes. But yeah, otherwise the podcast, no, it goes out.
It sounds like you have a really good support network in your co-hosts and your wife. And Heather, it sounds amazing that you have Jillian. Maybe you haven't had chats recently, but there's nothing to say that won't happen again. It's awesome that you have that connection. Um, as far as what I've been working on, nothing as exciting as Logan or Heather. And feel free. I send me the bill for your hotel room if you need to take a shower after I say this. I'll pay for it. Not really, but I have been working on growing my brand. Blech. Not really, but more growing the awareness of the stuff that I work on. I've really been terrible at that over the past couple of years. I have just I've never cross promoted or done anything to bring awareness to the other stuff I've been working on. So right now, I have too much. Maybe that's why. But I have geeksrising.com. I have podcastage.com. I have bandrewscott.com and I have bandrewsays.com. So I've really been focusing on making my social media, mainly just Twitter, more concise and to the point, and having direct links to that content. So if anybody sees a tweet that I put out and think, hey, that's a good tweet, they can go look at my profile and maybe they'll see something in my bio that seems interesting. So they'll click on it and check it out. That's the main thing that I've been focusing on. And then there's also, I launched YouTube members. And that's an amazing thing. We're amazing people like Heather and Eldest who are here, obviously. Um, they support you and they get access to some exclusive stuff I'm trying to grow the value there where I have started doing an exclusive monthly podcast. It's kind of behind the scenes discussing the business of the channel, analyzing how the channel is doing, talking about the upcoming schedule, and just sharing some struggles that go on with running the channel. And I've had so much fun making that, but I want to maybe increase the frequency of that because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that I want to share with people, but I don't know if it's appropriate to put some of this stuff on blast. So it's behind a paywall, knowing that it will have somewhat of a limited distribution, and then also creating some behind the scenes footage, not much, but I did a behind the scenes of building this wall of boxes that I've been saving up for a year for a review I did of the Aston Stealth microphone, where I jump through it, ripping off a YouTuber by the name of Max Mofo. Absolutely ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun. And I would say I haven't been spending, well, this isn't something that I sit down and do. It's something that's always nagging at the back of my mind. It's constantly trying to improve. And the way that I do that is by taking criticism seriously. That's something that I've struggled with in the past, but your audience is probably your best critic or the best way to improve because they're the people you want watching or listening or reading what you're creating. So when they say, this part didn't work for me, or why didn't you include this, or your voice sounds stupid, you're fat and ugly, that's who you listen to. Maybe not the last one. That's a bad example, but you get the point. Listening to your audience's actual constructive criticism is insanely helpful. And that has really helped me improve over the last couple of years. And also, the last thing that I've been focusing on is taking more responsibility and accountability as my audience has grown. That's something that I've struggled with where as my audience grows, I feel a growing obligation to ensure that I don't put out any information that's incorrect or that I completely explain every single one of my points or positions so it's not mistaken. And that becomes incredibly time consuming. On the last episode, it took 4.5 hours to edit, and there was 81 edit points. I know because I counted it. But that's the last thing that I've been working on, and it has been insanely rewarding and difficult. But I think the end product has improved.
I want to say that it your dedication to Geeks Rising, Podcastage, Bandrew Says, Bandrew Scott, all your different sites and branding, uh, is amazing, and the growth is very important because I think we all got started, and the first step is to not be so afraid to put yourself out there. That like flaws and all, but like you're saying, as your channels have grown, the community has grown, you're not beholden to them, like you don't owe them something, but you're saying like you're taking value in that. And especially looking at the comments in your on your YouTube, like you have a community that really is there, and it's because you paid attention and you help foster like positive energy and by putting it out there and your attitude. And I think the first step to creating anything, I think, is not being afraid to put it out there, because otherwise you spin and be you're afraid and you edit, or you keep hiding and being afraid to put out your failures. So it's like, come out messy and then keep
Yes.
refining. Like don't be afraid to grow and change, and keep refining and distilling your work and finding how to become better. And so it's like, but your first thing shouldn't be like, well, if it's not 100% perfect the first time, I won't do it. Because I think that's the first step people get afraid of. And then they see something like someone joining one of your episodes now is seeing a really fine product, but it didn't always start there. And
No.
some of it's research, and some of it is just not being afraid to get started, because then once you hit record, you're like, oh, it's real. Once I made my first book, I was like, this thing's real. All the mistakes made me look at the next one and get better. And but if I was too afraid to put that out there, I would still be in like my room, and I wouldn't be getting to be have this conversation with both of you. So I appreciate everything you've done, and it proves that like growing and changing is a part of the process.
I think it's
Thanks.
important to note that that all of that experience just takes time. Like there is this massive pressure to do it all and achieve it all right now, but that's like not what happens. Overnight success isn't really something that exists. It happens after over a long time of hard work and experience, trial and error, and looking at it and reviewing it and making a course correction or whatever. And you do a really good job at that because you care about what you put out and the value you put out. Both of you do. So yeah, takes time.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a saying that I really like. It's a 10-year overnight success, which is most stories. It's very rare that you will see somebody who starts any project and it becomes successful the next day. Most of the time there's years of work behind the scenes that have prepared them for that. So that's something that's really important to remember if anybody watching or listening is a creator. If you're too scared to put it out, don't be. Just put it out there. A good thing, when we all start, nobody's watching, nobody's listening. It takes time to grow that audience, and it's fun for your audience to see you grow. So Logan, on the point that you brought up, did you Did you see a big change from when you started to now, or how big of a change, I should say, did you see from episode 0 of the Paper Robots to your current conversations with creators and on the subject?
Yeah, so when Paper Robots first started, it was I was using the Zoom H4n, the XY mic in a room with
Mhm.
echoing audio, and I had this I had this pleasant tweet message from a guy telling me to fix my bleep. Uh, no, but if I didn't record it, you would have never commented, and I would have never thought about it. So then I bought microphones and I learned what worked for me, and I'm constantly tweaking that side. But also, I learned what my conversations were gonna be and how to talk to people and the content I wanted to provide. And then I noticed the people that did stick through the bad audio to the better audio to the getting better audio now, people have really latched onto the content. Like there's the content is king or queen or ruler in whatever case. But content is really what's important. And that's what I think my audience latched onto. It wasn't the quality at first. It was it was the quality of the content, not the quality of the audio. And it was the same thing with the comics. But yeah, what I've learned is really come out with what you want to do and care about that. You shouldn't become an actor to win an Oscar. You should do it because you want to, and an Oscar is like the cherry on top. And that's the same thing
Exactly.
with making content. It's you're not coming into it to get money or get rewards. It's those are the byproduct of your hard work. And so growing, I mean, switching over to two new shows meant the branding issue of rebranding these two new shows and putting that out there, but it also became a clean slate of two focus shows
Yeah.
and having them both have their own avenues. And so I've noticed that okay, now I get the people that want which stuff. I think that answered it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very great point, and you have progressed a lot from episode 0 of the Paper Robots. Steve Freeman in the chat left a very good point. Most people never start because they're afraid to fail, but failing is inevitable. You should welcome it because that's where you learn and grow. 100% absolutely, Steve. Failure is the best teacher. Heather, can I ask you, what's the maybe this is the wrong place to ask. I'll answer it first. What's the biggest failure that you've learned from? And I guess my biggest mistake or my biggest failure is not explaining my positions so people could interpret them any way they want. And that led to a lot of hatred online, people making videos criticizing everything that I say, and it was draining. But had I not put out those videos that had those horrible mistakes that left out a lot of testing, a lot of information, I never would have learned that they lacked that information, and I never would have made that adjustment to start to include that. That's my biggest mistake, in my opinion, at least in the content creation journey. There's a lot of personal mistakes, but we're not going down that road.
Um, Maybe like this is gonna sound a bit weird, but I'm not sure what my biggest failure is. And the reason why is because when I answered what is success for better podcasting a while back, I said that success is the metrics that you decide. It's not someone else's metrics because you can never live up to those and they don't mean anything to you. And my measures of success were all the little elements that I do that end up making my content get out there. So you could say my failure is consistency because it hasn't been consistent. On the flip side of that, though, I found it a little bit hard to like make it consistent because it's kind of working through a journey and I can't keep that to a 7-day schedule sometimes with everything else that's going on. So I failed in consistency because I guess that's what they say you need to do for a podcast and to reach people and grow and all that kind of thing. And I learned from it to think about what is it for me. I would love to have it get back on track and be consistent, but at the end of the day, making the content the best I can is my priority over and above that. So it was
Yeah.
defining what that is for me, I guess, was my learning.
Yeah, that's something that I have personally struggled with as well. I just had a call with a Google partner manager, and I got 0 out of it. I could have saved myself 15 minutes, but I don't think that was the partner manager's fault. I think it's that I didn't have clearly set goals to provide them and have them help me with that, with setting or achieving those goals. So I understand that 100% setting goals is key, especially if they're actionable goals, or even defining what you want to accomplish with the
Yeah,
project you're working on.
yeah. I think if you don't have that, you're floundering anyway, and it will be very hard to stay motivated and work through the tough stuff and work through whatever you consider a failure.
Yeah. Let's change gears and talk a little bit about what we've learned. So, Heather, you've done quite a lot in terms of your Sunshine Summit, coming on board with the network. I don't know if you've learned anything from us. We're a bunch of dopes over here, but you've been doing a lot. What have you learned over your all the stuff you've been working on the last couple of months?
That I enjoy it. I like being creative and I like having all the different elements. There was a comment, and maybe we'll get to it at the end in the Q&A, but about how we do all the things that we do. And it is about having a plan. And like I said earlier about having the intention, I enjoy it all. And it, the, I enjoy the outlet, the conversational outlet. That's why I began in the beginning, was to kind of build my confidence and have a place to share my stories. And that's what I'm doing. So I've learned planning's important. I've learned scheduling people is a little bit hard, but I mean, you make it work and you kind of be flexible at the same time. So that goes into not being not being scared to put things out there. Just go with the flow, and ride the waves, because there will be ups and downs. There will be times when things are going really awesome, and then when it's a lot harder and just things seem to be getting at you and not helping, but just ride the waves and go through it so you can get there. And then on that note, I had big lows last year that were hard to work through. So yeah, having the support network that we talked about earlier, having people that you can talk to. And I think that's what I'm really grateful for being a part of Geeks Rising, is because that does feel like a community and a network. And you guys have been real supportive, especially in March, because there were some challenges at the end of the Sunshine Summit there that were made me very concerned about how to move forward. And you guys were really, really level-headed and supportive. And so I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. We're always here for you because you're the best. Heather's the
Yeah,
best.
yeah, for
If
sure.
anybody doesn't know Heather, absolute best.
Just
Rock star.
look up the best, and there you go.
Yeah, exactly. In the dictionary, Merriam-Webster or Merriam-Webster, however you pronounce it. Picture of her. Logan, Logan, did we cover what you've learned? I think
I
we
don't,
may have.
I don't, I don't think I learned. I don't know what I learned. No. Well, on Heather's note of failure and how you look at it, I think you learn from your failures, like in the comment. And so the questions kind of tie into each other as far as like what your biggest failure was or what you see, but at the same time you're talking about what you've learned, and I think you learn through whether you see it as a failure or not, you're learning, and that's a really good way. That's a really positive way to be. And I think like having met your podcast, Heather, and your outlook is such a sunshine and bright spot that it's really awesome that you're not thinking about it as failures, just as learning opportunities, and not as these like micro problems, but as okay, what's the hurdle? And I think consistency is huge for growing a podcast and everything. But like you're saying, if you can put out quality content, I think that's what's more true to you. And especially with your show being a journey that you're living through, you can't be like, well, so what's my story arc here? What was my call to action this week? But at the same time, it's like looking at how you can look at your week and through your lens. And so for me, I like storytelling. So I look at the podcasts I do from story versus the stories I tell as like I'm looking at both those things and trying to make all those things connect. And once you start to see that when you watch movies, everything you start to break it down, you see everything, and it starts to become everything's a learning opportunity and how you can distill yourself and talk about things. And I think I've just learned through uh, my failures as far as I used to drink on the show for liquid courage, and I got too drunk on some shows, and I learned that that was stupid and silly. And then having multiple hosts and getting comments and feedback, whether it was from Bandrew or comments of the audio is too quiet, it made me really like, oh, I need to focus, because I put my headphones on and then I edit, and you get used to editing. So you just, oh yeah, I'm listening to them. And you don't think about the bigger, how is editing this going to actually sound in a different car environment? So I've learned a lot through feedback and just through trying to pay attention to those things. Like, how is someone else going to look at this? Same way with writing my stories. How is someone going to read this versus the story I already have in my head?
Absolutely. And the thing that I find most interesting about all of this is it's very universal, the way that we learn and the things that we've learned. It's almost identical, where we've learned from failing, trying and failing. We've learned from criticism that we get. We've learned from being consistent with the content, or focusing on creating the highest quality. We've all learned from doing the exact same thing. So if you are somebody who's trying to improve, just learn from our mistakes. Take from us. We've tried stuff, we've failed, and that's something else that I think is the internet is an invaluable resource. Go out there and find people who are talking about what they've done. Find out what they did wrong, what they learned from it, how they came back from it, how they improved from it. And I think that with how much is out there, there's no reason that anybody can't start creating something, can't start on some kind of journey. It's, I think, the most exciting time for anybody who likes content. It's so awesome. So 100%. Um, we're getting near the end. We have about 17 minutes left. So if you have any questions, leave them in the chat on YouTube and we will answer them near the end. I guess
Can
I'll
I
talk.
just say something to the thing
Absolutely.
about sorry, about like, it's really good to find stories that will help inspire you from what everyone else is doing, but I just wanna have a caveat and say, do not compare yourself to people, because the other side of that is everyone's journey is completely different. And I've struggled with this. I guess I don't know if it's a failure, but seeing people who started at the same time as I did is about the only thing that I can group myself with a bunch of people, because I don't know anyone else who's doing a podcast on wellness and living off the grid at the same time and smushing it together. But imposter syndrome, or comparing yourself to people and thinking that you're not good enough to do it, is not the route you want to go down. You want to look for the actual points that they did. Oh, they had this problem and these are the steps they went through. I can apply that to what I'm doing, which is different to what they're doing. And yeah, I think that's an important thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very good point, because comparing yourself to others, as Heather said, everybody's journey is different and it can be very toxic when you
Mm.
begin actually comparing yourself, especially comparing your success, whatever that is, comparing numbers to another creator. That's the fastest way to start hating yourself and just say, that's it, I'm giving up. It's the fastest way. It's a stupid thing to do and it accomplishes nothing.
Yeah,
I just
I
sorry.
agree. I feel like we at the same time we all go through that. So if you get those feelings, try to understand that everyone else is probably feeling that at some point or has, or will feel it next week. And then, but it's about moving past that and being like, okay, don't let that stop you. Like, because everyone feels it. We all feel vulnerable and like that. Like, especially with the podcasts, I've felt like, I don't have the numbers that I want that I made up in my head. But it's like, well, why am I doing the show? There's a reason I'm already doing it. So just focus on that and focus on how I can improve on my end to make it the best I can make it, and let those numbers, the data, the whatever fall where it may, or stop making it if I really if that's all my focus is. Like, that's I think that gets silly and it gets really hard. And that's why I do conversations with creators. Like, for me, each episode is my own therapy of talking to another creator, them sharing their story, their journey. And it's because they make different content than me or the same stuff. They got their own success their own way. So I can learn from that. I can compare if I want, or I can just take away, like, they went through XYZ, which is different than me, but they're still doing it. And I'm going through XYZ, which is different from them, but we're still doing it. And I can learn, oh, that's how they coped with this. Or it's all about learning how different people do stuff, but also everyone is making their own thing and they all are starting from a different point that you can compare to, but you can't and you never will. So don't worry about it and just make
Yeah.
your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect place to end the discussion. So let's jump to a couple of questions that were received. Both of the ones that I have copied down are from American Liberty. The first one is, if Heather is the good intentions influence on the network, who is the bad?
I don't think I'm the only one. So I'm going to say that I've learned a lot from Bandrew following his journey for the from like 2017, so nearly 2 years, and also with Logan. And I love the way that you tell stories, Logan, and that you keep going and that you've split the show into two, because I loved both elements of the paper robots, but you've kind of taken it this journey. So they have good intentions. They have great way of sharing the content they're making, and they're committed to making it better each time and stuff. So we all have good intentions.
Okay, I'm going to jump in and say it's Logan. Logan's the bad influence.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
but in seriousness, I agree with Heather. There aren't any bad influences. We all just focus on different things. We all do have different focuses, so we all can learn from each other, and we get different perspectives from one another. So there's no actual bad influence. But funny question, Logan, do you think that there's anybody who's bad on the network?
No,
Maybe.
I'll go with me. That's fine. I'll take that.
Okay.
I got the evil beard. Plus I've never been the bad boy in the group, so I'll take it. I'll be
You need to dye your beard black and then just
yeah.
shave it into a goatee so you can be like a 1800s kind of wizard that goes
Yeah,
around and puts curses on people.
or tying people to train tracks. What are you going?
Yeah, either or. Either or.
No,
Who knows if we'll be back for another episode, guys.
Yeah.
I need to make that content for us, okay?
Yeah. Logan
no.
calling in next month from the jail.
Yes. They probably have good Wi-Fi. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
No, both of you have been such positive influences and good influence on me. Like, with feedback I've got from both of you and how you do audio and visual and run your own stuff. Both, like, starting a live stream summit and Bandrew, like, starting with a focus, and with your podcast, it's changed over the years. And but podcasted, you came out with a strong voice, and it allowed me to see how things can be done. And then I also knew you personally, so I could ask you, like, for feedback. And Heather, like, coming out with something positive and from a different angle that I would have only stumbled on through, like, the podcast community. It's been awesome because, like, it it's both been good influences on me and learning and hearing someone else's journey, and then how you record and do things. And so I've only learned. So I'll take the bad influence blame.
But we're the Geeks Rising, right? So we're all geeks rising up. So
Yeah.
we're not leaving anyone
Gamers
behind.
rise up.
Yeah.
Yes.
We just got a very good question from Luke Who's Talking. Amazingly fun story podcast if anybody's looking for it. And I should also note that Steve Freeman, who was referenced earlier, has an awesome live stream on his YouTube channel and American Liberty. I don't know if his show's launched yet, but he does amazing stuff and it's hilarious. He sent a question into the Bander Says podcast. But Luke's question is, when it comes to social media for your brand, bleh, do you try and post things so many times per week? I know that I have a very strong opinion on this, but first, let's go to Heather. Heather, what are your thoughts on posting, or do you think there's a set rule for how much you should post for your brand on social media, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, anything?
I think it lies within the question, the failure in that. How many is a quantity thing, and I don't think that is what you should go for. I think a brand should be consistent theme across all the things you do. It doesn't matter how many times you put it out there. It should be just a consistent message. So you don't want to have 2 or 3 Twitter handles and be saying things on one of them that is completely opposite and negating what you're trying to do on the other one. You want them to all have a similar message.
So
Yeah.
what I'm getting out of you is these fast food brands that get in battles with each other, just primo content. That's what
Hmm.
we should all be basing our social media off of.
Yeah.
No, but I agree with that 100%. That's my stance as well. I don't think you should. Well, first off, I should say maybe don't listen to me because I am terrible at growing social media accounts. But I don't think you should say I need to post 5 times a day because that's what's expected to stay at the front of people's minds. Who cares? Why are you going to spam people who trusted you enough to hit follow? I think you should only be posting when you're offering something of value to your audience or something that could be interesting to them. I don't think posting 5 or 10 times a day with retweets of random things that have nothing to do with what your focus is really beneficial for you or your audience. This is assuming that you actually care about growing your audience or developing a trusting relationship with your followers. If you don't, if you're just doing it for fun, do whatever the heck you want. But that's my stance on it. Logan, do you have any opinions on this question from Luke?
Yeah. No, yeah, I think there's a difference between how you want to engage people and the content you're trying to provide. I totally agree. I think if you're gonna be on Twitter and posting like, "Look at all the noodles I ate today" or something, is that the story like you're trying to get? And if that's what you're putting out there, then your followers are engaging with that and not here's my podcast. So then whenever you post about your podcast, it's like your followers aren't really caring about like share what story you want to be telling to your audience. Like you're curating this online, so share the stuff that you want them to be engaging in. And if it's about your eating habits, then that's the type of followers you're going to get. So understand that. Instagram and stuff, there's all the algorithms and like YouTube about how to maximize your like SEO, but that's a whole different game of how much engagement you're trying to get on each platform. And if Instagram is where you want to do things, then you can look at how to get the max amount of views, but do that through the lens of what am I trying to tell on here? Not just, oh, well, if I post 5 times in my story and then I add a thing to my feed, it'll maximize me being the top search thing. Okay. If that's what you're trying to do, make it a part of your story though. Okay. So I'm posting me unboxing the microphone that I'm going to look into for this week. And like you can try to make the algorithm work for you, but if your two things aren't aligning, focus on it being true to who you are and the content you want to put out versus like I got to hit these certain numbers and that's what's going to make the money. Like no.
I think
Absolutely.
I think the other thing is using it as a tool for engaging with others. So not just going, here's my thing that I want you to read, like shouting at people on the internet. Why don't you like follow a couple of other people and comment there and share some value on something that's related? Because that's how people get to know you. They're like, oh yeah, I remember Luke was in the thing and he commented on this and he had a really cool thing. Or we might see his post or his Instagram picture or something he did that's related to the podcast or something. But just it's not one way, it's kind of a two-way street, I feel would be more helpful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's another very good point that social media isn't just a board that you throw. This isn't a bulletin board where you post an ad and just walk away. This is, I think, the most beneficial way to use social media as a platform to have a discussion with people. That's how you develop relationships. This seems like it could come across as kind of sleazy, but I think having a conversation with your audience is the best way to grow that audience, or at least show that you value them, that you care about your audience, and that you're listening to them. And I think that's the best way to use social media. So 100% agree. I don't know if that came across right, or if it sounded like I'm just, oh yeah, just grow your audience. That's the only reason you talk to them. It's fun talking to your audience. Let me just point that out.
Well, and I think both of you have done that where you're talking to your audience and then it becomes from just listeners, just audience to community, whether it's in the Discord. Like that's where that change happens of like these are people just grabbing your flyer from the bulletin board to, oh wait, I can actually interact with this person and I'm getting feedback, and it becomes not just an audience, it's a community, and it changes the way it's viewed a little bit and shapes kind of where you're going versus other things where it's like other you're just clicking and blasting, and that's a whole different type of audience you're going to serve.
That's such a good point. There's a podcaster and a comedian. I guess he's mainly a comedian, Doug Benson, who does Doug Loves Movies, a show about movies where he has comedy guests on and they make jokes about films. But something that stands out about Doug Benson to me is that on social media, he has 700,000 followers, but he still replies to people and has conversations with them about movies, about certain aspects of his show. It creates such that there's more engagement. You feel more invested in what he's doing because now he seems more like a friend. And it's so cool being able to tweet at Doug Benson, and then very rarely, but occasionally he will reply to people, and it's just so cool to see. So I
He
agree
replied to me.
100%. He did?
Yeah, so for on the subject, since we talk about movies, I was just like on there and I made a joke where I tagged the other hosts, Malcolm and Zach, and it's from a game that he does on Doug Love Movies where you string along a movie title as long as you can, like feeding off of the last word in the previous movie title. And so I did that, and I tagged my other co-hosts that they would reply, and I sourced Doug Benson because I knew that's where the idea came from. And
Mhm.
so after we all had replied, he replied, he's like, looks like you're having fun. He just like replied something. And I was like, he didn't have to do that. He gets tagged, I'm sure, all the time, but
Mhm.
it was kind of awesome that he took the time to go like, oh, cool job or whatever. So yeah.
Perfect example. We got two more questions. I don't know if we're going to get to both of them. Maybe we'll go a little bit over since this is the inaugural episode. The first one we'll do is from American Liberty again. Do you find yourself monitoring your personality to avoid activating a potential audience or pushing it? Logan, do you, when you're posting stuff, is there, do you find yourself editing certain things out that you say in a podcast or an episode, or are there certain topics that you try to avoid because you know that would bring in a certain type of audience member that you don't want? Or is it really just everything that you put out there is 100% you?
I feel pretty safe saying what I put out there is 100% me, with the caveat of I've learned to be more inclusive, whether that, over the years, uh, using non binary terms and like genderless terms and including people because it's easy. It's such an easy change to make. But as far as being critical on something or the stories I want to tell or the things I want to talk about, I do have my opinion and I have shows for that. And so when I talk about not liking something, I'm prepared to get feedback on that and stand where I am with it. That being said, I feel like I don't have a lot of controversial views or um I'm not I'm not a very politically active person, so I'll retweet or share something that I agree with and I don't worry about the fallout of that. But at the same time, my agenda isn't to break into politics. So I don't want that to be that's not the focus of my narrative that I'm putting out there to begin with.
On that note, anybody who's watching, don't be confused. This is not Dave Rubin. This is Logan. Just don't get confused. He may look like Dave Rubin, but he's not the political talk show host or political spokesperson Dave Rubin.
Yeah.
I personally do find myself monitoring not my personality, but the topics that I cover. It's not because I'm scared of backlash of my opinions on certain topic areas. It's that I don't want my show to turn into a political discussion. That's not what I'm doing. It could very easily, because tech news and creator news is parallel to a lot of what's going on in politics right now, with the number of people being banned and blocked and all sorts of stuff. It would be very easy to go into politics, but I try to avoid that with every fiber of my being, because I don't want to draw in that political audience, because it can be so toxic and just break you down. That's my personal stance, and I don't view it as insincere, because I'm not changing who I am. I am just limiting the topics that I want to focus on, because I don't think it would really offer value to people who are coming to my show to find out, how is this going to affect me as a content creator? They don't need to know what my thoughts are on this certain legislation or this certain politician. It just doesn't matter. Heather, do you have any do you feel like you have to monitor yourself to limit the audience, or to try to avoid a certain type of audience?
Well, not. I don't know if I have a clean show, right? So that's a simple choice you can make, whether it's explicit or clean or whatever. And I did that on purpose because I'm trying to create something that is mindful, and there is a certain theme that goes with that. So I use a particular style of voice when I do it, and that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And when I do interviews with other people, they'll say, "Oh, well, if you want to swear, you can." And it's like, no, I'm good. Like, I don't need to use that on a public platform where I'm going to get recorded. It does not to say that I don't do that in my personal life. So it's not that I'm changing my personality. I am who I am across all things, and I'm genuine. It's just you don't need to see all of it, I guess, at any one point. That doesn't offer value to what I'm doing, and it fits the style of something that I'm creating. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That, I think we're in the same boat there.
Yeah.
Uh, the last question that we have is from Steph. Her question is, how do you manage your time to do all the podcasting things you do and real life? I'm terrible at reading. I think that became very apparent. I did not know where a punctuation was or where it wasn't. Let me try that one more time. Steph says, how do you manage your time to do all the podcasting things you do and real life? Heather, how do you do it? Because with the Sunshine Summit, you got so much on your plate. How the heck do you manage that?
I think, to be honest, I think I'm the worst person who manages their time out of all of us. With the summit, I had a plan. So I know how far out, and it's from experience. I realized that it's a big event and it needs time. So I made a plan and I had checkpoints. I need to achieve this by then. I wanted to have people booked and create the social media stuff and put it out there and create the things behind the scenes. So it's having a plan and checking it off as you go. And I find it hard to manage life that outside of content creation and podcasting. I find it really hard, and I try in the beginning, I was good at it, and I had a set release day of Sundays, and that was my New Zealand time. I'll just be clear. um, but like, I think it's not getting overwhelmed with all of that too. I mean, consistency is hard. Not letting it beat you up, because you can get very dark and spirally down if you think it's all overwhelming. You're not achieving as you should. Um, do what you enjoy. That helps make it a bit easier, but having a plan, booking things in, making a time, setting aside time to do it are good things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's fascinating. We can all start with a schedule, but it will inevitably fall by the wayside when something changes in our life, whether it could be anything. Does the workload change? Does somebody come and visit unexpected? It changes everything. So you can plan until you turn blue in the face, but that doesn't mean that life is going to go according to that plan. I think that's something important to remember. And creating something that you actually enjoy is what pushes you through those difficult times. Logan, how do you manage doing 2 podcasts now? How the heck do you do it? With and I think scheduling 3 people, yourself, Malcolm, and Zach. How the tell us, please, how?
I don't. No, it really does. There's been times where one of us has gotten sick, so we can't make it, or work schedule changed, so they stayed later. But it really came down to, for the on the subject, talking about films, we had an opportunity where you can bank episodes, because we're not always doing the freshest like movie coming out. We're doing series and looking at a film series, so it allows you to record the older ones in time, and as long as you stay on top of editing, those can be banked. And we always talk throughout the week, and we text and go, okay, can we meet this Sunday? But almost every other week we have to adjust, whether it's a day the next day, or an hour earlier or an hour later. So it's literally a work in progress every time we meet up. I'm constantly figuring out how to meet up, and that's the same thing with interviewing creators. It's okay, they're 2 hours ahead of me or an hour behind, so what day of the week can we record that, and then I can edit it and change it. I don't know. I don't sleep. How
So
about that?
here's a question for you. I'm asking because with creator case study, I had a bunch of interviews lined up and a few of them fell through, and that really discouraged me. Have you dealt with that, Logan? And if so, how did you overcome that? Do you ever just get discouraged when an interview that you are really excited about fell through? And what did you do?
Yeah, with the paper robots, that's why also switching into 2 new podcasts and letting conversations with creators kind of be a little more of an irregular schedule. And I really wanted to focus on creators that I want to talk to, and because I love the value that they're putting out there and the diversity that they're of content that they make, versus trying to get an episode every week. With paper robots, I realized I was falling into the trap of like, well, I got it comes out on Thursday, got to have a content, and people would inevitably like fall out, and it was discouraging. And then it made me shift in my brain like, okay, well, I just need to get someone who can come and record. And that wasn't the best idea. I felt like that it lowered the quality of like what I was going for. At the same time, it changed the ideas, and I was able to then have different types of episodes to cover up for that. But I have since learned, no, I want to just focus on when I can get people, and let the content be what it is when it comes out, and getting the best product. Going in knowing that something could happen, and not trying to put the blame on them or getting angry because life happens, was like the biggest thing. Just be like, okay, breathe. I can figure it out. And I usually try to talk to 2 people a week, so that way I could, okay, hey, this person can't make it. Well, I'll just switch and be like, well, can you still do this episode? Um, it just comes with time, and just realizing like everyone, it's like not getting mad at traffic. You're like, okay, we're all trying to get home. It is what it
Oh,
is.
wait, you're not supposed to get mad at traffic? Is that a sign of being healthy? I don't
I,
know.
I don't know.
Um, no, I think that's a very good approach. It sounds like it ties back to the focusing on the quality of content rather than just, I have to get it out Thursday. I'm putting it out Thursday. Instead of that, you're just ensuring that what you're putting out offers the most value. And that may come from you being the most excited about having that person on and rescheduling. And that may mean a delay in the release of the episode, but ultimately the end product would be better.
Yeah.
We have to remember that life is life and life will happen. We will have some things that are immovable, like if it's work and you can't just go, hey, no, I'm not coming to work or I'm not staying at work, if that's a thing. But then there are other things that we do actually make time. We can choose to make time for other things too. So, if you're passionate about it, you're more likely to be able to find and squeeze in time to make it happen as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. And I think that's why it's important to care about what you do and have fun with it. And it's amazing when you find somebody who wants to be a part of something you're doing and they're equally as excited about it. And that really shows in the final product. It may not be the most fine-tuned thing. There may be mistakes, there may be errors, but the energy and the passion in those types of episodes or videos or anything really shines through and the audience notices that. So agree 100%. I think we're going to wrap up. Let's talk about announcements. I know Heather has a couple. So Heather, what do you got to announce?
In May, I am part of the 3rd annual live stream for the Cure, which is a fundraising event raising money for the Cancer Research Institute. Last year, I was a part of it. It's run by epic film guys Nick and Justin, and I think it's 40 hours of live streaming that they are doing from the 17th of May to whatever 40 hours is after that. I am on the first day at 9 p.m. Eastern on May the 17th, which is 1 p.m. 18th of May, and there's a whole bunch of different creators involved in that, doing a segment probably half an hour to an hour long or maybe a bit longer, where they're bringing things and getting people to come to the live stream to be entertained and to raise funds for the Cancer Research Institute.
That's awesome. And I watched last year. It was so much fun. And it's awesome seeing a community get together and raise so much money for this great cause. It's super cool to see. Um, let's just go around and share. Well, I guess what's the URL for that, Heather?
Livestreamforthecure.com.
Perfect. Now let's get our social media links because we gotta hoe ourselves out. Is that a saying? I don't know. um, Logan, where can people find you? Well, first off, you can find all the shows at geeksrising.com if you want to check out any of the podcasts. And you can, if you're watching this or listening to this, you already know where to find it. But Logan, where can people find you personally?
You can follow me at that Logan on Twitter and Instagram. So at that Logan, and go to thatlogan.com is my site where I also have the links to the podcast and to my comics. I have a comic on Webtoons, so there's links there and all that stuff. And I tweet through that Logan and Instagram.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Heather, where can people find what you're working on?
On Instagram at SunPowerPod, and Twitter is the same at SunPowerPod, or sunshineandpowercuts.com.
Super. Highly recommend checking out both of their social media and their website, sunshineandpowercuts.com at that. No, not at that Logan, thatlogan.com. If you want to find me at Bandrew Says, or you can find bandrewscott.com. I can't even remember them, or podcastage.com. I finally bought it. Eat my something, huge domains. I hate all you choose to be. You're the worst. And geeksrising.com. That's pretty much it. If you want to send feedback on this episode, if you got questions, go ahead and send them to us on Twitter at Geeks Rising. And I think that'll wrap up for today. Thank you all so much for coming. Heather, Logan, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so wonderful. Thank you, both of you.
And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. See ya.
Bye.